What is the common thread that connects us all?
Sometimes we feel alone and we believe that we are the only person on earth who could possibly feel this way.
But maybe we all have more in common than we think.
So, we're asking for people's point of view to talk about their experiences in an attempt to better ourselves and find the common thread that connects us all. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Anaheim Stoneworks and Masertati LA Training Center.
Anaheim Stoneworks has provided many Southern California homes with finely crafted countertops and many other applications of granite, marble, travertine, and other stone surfaces for over 20 years. Nothing says luxury like natural stone enhancement of your home, and no one provides affordable quality from start to finish like Anaheim Stoneworks.
Masertati LA Training Center offers authentic Muay Thai training with locations in Bangkok, Pomona, and Anaheim. For more information, visit masertatila.com.
It's a real pleasure to have my dear friend, Matt Budna, on air with us today. A very close friend, somebody I've developed a relationship with over the last 3 years. Got to know very well. Appreciate you joining us for the show today, Bud.
Thanks for having me.
This is a show that explores human happiness. I'm Sophia Silva, and this is Jason Wahler.
Thank you. So, Matt, what we do is we really explore, people's, inner happiness and how they've come to fruition of the life they're living today. And I think you're a prime example of that. I mean, could you give us just a little background on who you are and who Matt is?
Well, I just recently celebrated 8 years of recovery, and by recovery I mean, gaining back what once was lost. Somewhere along the lines through my early teens and early 20s, I became highly addicted to alcohol and drugs, and somewhere I lost myself. Had no feelings whatsoever, other than numb. People asked me many times if I was okay, and my answer was always I'm fine, and I was never fine. I just didn't know how to ask for help. It started at a very young age, and I used food to feel better. I started using cigarettes. I took my first drink when I was around 9 years old, and from that point on, I found anything that I could to alter my mind or my mood, because I just wasn't okay inside. And again, I didn't know how to ask for help.
Wanting to escape reality, huh?
Absolutely, at any cost. And it was the book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about not being able to differentiate the true from the false. And I lived in that delusional state it talks about for a majority of my life. And I used to remember being in my late 20s and riding around in my car and seeing people homeless and living on the streets, and knowing full well at that time I had a problem with alcohol and drugs, but never really wanting to admit that my life was unmanageable. And that's what the first step requires for it to be successful. For you to be able to even move through the rest of the steps, there's two parts to that step, and it's admitting you're powerless over alcohol or drugs, and then admitting your life is unmanageable. I would never admit the second half of that, because I would look at people like that and say, I'm not that bad yet. But to me, yet means you're eligible to, and that's exactly what happened as my disease progressed, and as the unmanageability got to the point where I could no longer hide it from everybody. See, I was very good at hiding how I felt and what I did from everyone, living that life of isolation.
You tried to justify everything.
Absolutely, and trying to explain and lie and manipulate and cheat and steal not only material things, but emotions.
Do you believe that? Because I've heard it's a disease of denial.
Absolutely, it's a disease that'll tell you don't have a disease. Can
you talk about that more? Because that I think that is something that's really interesting, especially with all the talk that's out there today about how this is a disease. It's not a disease. I mean, I think that's something right there that's really important to touch on.
I never really made an effort to get any kind of sobriety or recovery through my 20s, even into my early 30s. I always used the excuse I'm not that bad, or I don't really have a problem. I just need to quit for a while. And there were times where I had short periods of just being dry. And what I mean by that is I just didn't drink or use. And I felt worse during those times than I did when I was drinking and using. And it's
can you explain that? How you felt worse? Why did you feel? What was that?
Yes, I could not stand the way I felt to the point of being depressed and anxiety and panic and fear and those things. And I didn't. You take away my coping mechanism, and I no longer was able to function in society.
What did you do moving forward?
I went back to what I know, and I started drinking and using again.
How did you stop? When did you get into treatment?
What happened is I was about 35 years old, and one more time I manipulated my way back into my parents' home with more lies and promises to stop and do better. And I hit what I like to call an emotional bottom, where I grabbed a backpack and the last few $1,000s that I had, and I just hit the streets. Now, at that point, this is a very crucial part of my story, because at that point, I had given up. I had completely given up. I didn't care anymore about anything or anybody, except I just wanted to get high and be left alone, and get drunk and be left alone. So
I want you to stay on that point, but so how long did you stop using, or white knuckling, shall we say? How long was that?
Intermittently, I would probably say a handful of times from my early teens to up until I was 37 years old. Intermittently, maybe a half dozen of times. There was never a period longer than 30 days where I tried to say, well, I'm not an alcoholic, or I'm not an addict. I can quit anytime I want, and I could never get longer than that.
So it drew us back to where now you're at your parents' house. You pack the backpack.
Yeah, and I in hindsight and looking back now, I headed out to just because I didn't want to live anymore, and I didn't know how to be a son. I didn't know how to be a friend anymore. I wasn't employable. All those things that I thought, and this gets back to what we were talking about, a problem, because I would hold all those things together, and that would...
Well, when you say that you didn't know how to be a child or employable or a friend or anything, it almost seems like you lost your humanity, like you kind of detached from being a person or yourself.
Absolutely. I completely, at that point, and I remember, because it was a very pivotal point in my life, where I remember just saying screw it. And I did. I completely detached from everything that I knew and everything that I thought that was holding the part of my life together that meant anything to me or that was worth anything.
How did you come back? Because I mean, you're so far gone. It almost seems like a slow, painful spiral down. How do you come out of that?
When that money ran out, just like it always does, and I ended up homeless, in a part of Orange County here in Anaheim, California, off of Beach and Ball, and I lived on the streets. I slept behind pick-a-part. I ate out of trash cans. I pushed a shopping cart down the street. I'd become earlier in my story when we were talking about that. I'd become that person that I used to drive by in my nice car and had money and thought that my life was manageable to some extreme. And I said, well, I'm not that bad yet. And fast forward, 12 to 15 years later, I became that person. I became that person. And here's what I want to be clear on. I never lost anything in my addiction. I gave everything away. And I think that you hear a lot of people in recovery, in treatment and in recovery, talk about how I lost this, I lost that. I don't ever believe that, and that's just my opinion personally. You give it away.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that
that's
completely. I love that.
I mean, we're given gifts, and we give
when
that
you
stuff
say
away.
You're giving gifts, I'm not understanding. So you're giving it away as
we give it away, one way or another. I mean, it comes to us and we work for it, and they're gifts and fruits of our labor.
Got it.
And then we in turn give those things away, and I'm glad we went down that road, because it brings me to another point. And another thing that I think a lot of people do is they blame the alcohol and drugs. Well, you see, the alcohol and drugs do exactly what they're supposed to do. I make a conscious choice to put that stuff in my body. I make a decision to do those things. So how can I blame the outcome on the alcohol and drugs? I drink for the effect produced by, because I'm maladjusted to life.
Real quick, I want to bring us back into the loop of things. So, because you have a lot of very valuable points, and I think it's crucial though, because going back to all this, because of what you're saying and where we're at, how does this fall into a disease to you? Going back to the very beginning when we were talking,
yeah, it absolutely does, and to fast forward, and like I said, I saw horrible things living on the street. Your survival skills kick in at that point. You know what I mean? I heard voices. I meth-induced psychosis. All those things that come along with that. It's amazing that one more time I manipulated my way back into my parents' house with a promise to change, and almost 8 years ago, I was at state line with my mom and dad, and one more time the incomprehensible demoralization, and hey, I'll just drink beer, and that didn't work, and for whatever reason, it was a morning I woke up, and there was a security guard posted outside my door, and my dad was ringing the phone in my room, and I blacked out, and I don't remember anything. I got down on my hands and knees in my hotel room because I was done. I was finished. I was ready to surrender. I had some willingness for the first time in my life. I really wanted to stop drinking and using, and I didn't know how. And I got down on my hands and knees and I asked God, please help me quit, because I don't know how.
So what happened next?
I went home with my parents on the bus. I started going to an Alano club every single day. That was my treatment, was going to an Alano club every day on the bus with a bagged lunch and a couple of dollars, and my dad telling me if I drive by there one time and don't see you there, I'm putting your stuff on the curb.
But at a point, we aren't able to make conscious decisions of ourselves. And I think that's something that I just wanted to touch on so people understand, is because when you're in the disease of addiction, you can't make a decision for yourself.
Correct.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that.
So it wasn't until I finally, and I don't want to call it a burning bush experience, but it wasn't until I finally was able to hit the bottom that I hit. First time in my life, I got to understand how sick I really was. I got to go through the doctor's opinion, the 5 mental classifications.
You're able to take a step back and be able to look down.
I wanted to know why I drank the way I drank. I wanted to know why I used the way I used. I wanted to know why I felt the way I felt, and I wanted to know why I couldn't live life without having to be high or drunk all the time. I wanted to know how to feel again, and to me, I never believed that alcoholism and drug addiction was a disease until I got sober and I started to do that type of work on myself. And I think that that's why the steps and the recovery process are so advantageous, and not just for alcohol and drugs. They work on anything. If you work the steps on anything, it will work. If you're powerless over something and it causes unmanageability in your life, those steps.
What are the breakdowns that you could give us to get the most out of that? What would you say the 3 takeaways from that would be?
To anybody listening today who's not familiar with the steps, or maybe a little bit familiar with the program, and you'll hear this a lot of times. They talk about trusting God, cleaning house and helping others, and to me that's just an analogy that I use. In the first 3 steps, we learn to trust God. In steps 4 through to 11, we learn to clean house. In step 12, we learn to help others.
What's clean house?
And for me, cleaning house means basically getting rid of all the old stuff inside of you, so you can fill it with new good stuff. That would be doing like a 4-step: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Those are the first 3 steps. You'll hear a lot of times how it works. How, H-O-W. The first step, you have to get honest. The second step, you have to be open. And the third step, you have to be willing. If you don't do those 3 steps and build a foundation, the rest of the steps don't work. And one thing about me, people will ask me sometimes, hey, what step are you on? I don't work steps. I live steps.
Mm-hmm. The lifestyle. It's a lifestyle.
It's a guideline for living.
Yeah.
And I can go through through any life situation on a daily basis, and sometimes I have to hit 4 or 5 different steps in my day
right.
That's so interesting. I mean, because I think that kind of comes to fruition is the life you're able to live today. Is you just nailed it. It's by what you've been practicing the day you switched, and the day that you got that moment of awakeness. I mean, it took you a little bit of time to understand it, but you live that on a daily basis now.
The bottom line is, for anybody listening out there who may be struggling or may be unsure, if you have any kind of problem, and it doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol or drugs. It can be just, I know people that have worked the steps on smoking, sex addiction, food, depression, anxiety, gambling. It's an amazing process. And the thing about it is, you have to get honest with yourself. If you can't get honest with yourself, surrender is to win in any one of those programs. And what I really want people out there who are listening to understand about AA or NA or OA or MA or PA, or I could go on and on and on, is that it's a design for living. It's a new way of life.
And we'll be able to post that stuff on our website so you can kind of get the background of what Matt's saying.
The broad spectrum here doesn't just stop at alcoholism and drug addiction. That's what drove me into the rooms. But I can sit here and share with you guys that I've fought through addiction. I've fought through depression, ADD. You know what I mean? All kinds of stuff. Feelings of not being good enough. And one thing I really want to stress to everybody that may be listening is that if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired and you want some help, ask for it. It's there. To surrender is to win. It's not giving up. It's being willing to want to change and become the person that, in my opinion, God wants us all to be.
It means a lot,
I think
Matt.
that's beautiful. I think that's spot on.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to kind of wrap this up. Is the way that you broke that down is right on point. And I think like I said, for the listeners out there, everything that Matt went over and stuff we'll have on our website, and you can find stuff on Matt at mattbudna.com. He's he's a thriving individual. He's got a lot going for him, and Matt, we really appreciate your time and stuff on the show today, and we really hope to have you back.
And it's important for people like you that have gone through it to share your experience and open up, because not everyone wants to do that. So
I questioned myself for years. Why me? Why me? Why did this happen to me? I don't ask myself that question anymore. Because God had a plan.
We love you, brother. Yeah. Thank you so much
for
coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys, man. Thank you.
We'd like to thank Anaheim Stone for making the show possible. Nothing says luxury like enhancing your surroundings with natural quality stone. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure to catch us every Tuesday by subscribing to our channel.
let us know in the comments below how you make life worth living. We're sure you have lots of great tips to share, and by working together, we can all thrive. I have it memorized.
She's good. I think that's going to be good. One more time. Let's do it again.
The speed needs to be a little bit faster. Can you make it a little bit faster?
No, I think it's better that way. I need to be able to